Welcome to this special edition of The Sport of Bowling Show. On this episode, we feature Inside Bowling founder Mike Flanagan, USBC Senior Director of Digital Media Jason Thomas, Creating the Difference founder and CEO Ron Hicklin. And now, it's time for The Sport of Bowling Show.
Man, I wish the drum roll just kept going here. Welcome, everybody, into the Sport of Bowling Show. Today is Tuesday, October the 18th, 2022, and I'll be your host today for the show. My name is Mike Flanagan. Welcome back. We are happy to have you for this special edition of the Sport of Bowling Show right here on Bowl TV. Debuting on Bowl TV, also available on YouTube. I'm monitoring the chat on YouTube throughout the show, so I see you all in there waiting for the show, and we're happy to have you here with us as well as everyone on Bowl TV. Today's topic, and to the audience watching here today, I'm just like you. We've seen all this stuff coming out about rules. We've seen some bowling balls that weren't approved. It's been an interesting year or so, to say the least. And there's a man that we're going to have on today who is very knowledgeable about the subject. He's got an engineering degree. He worked at developing bowling balls. His name is Ron Hicklin, Jr. We'll bring him in here in just a little bit. But today's topic is, why do we have rules in bowling? And I think many of us can say that we like to go out, we like to bowl, we like to watch high scores, we like to watch, PWBA Tour, PBA Tour. We like to go out and compete in local tournaments, sport bowling versus house bowling. But many of us think rules are boring, myself included, probably. But the more I started getting involved in being able to host this show today, I started kind of taking an interest in this quite a bit. And I think you and myself are going to learn a lot throughout today's show. So we're glad you're with us here today. It's not just me here today, though. We do also have a USBC representative. I like to call him my friend. We've worked together on Bowl TV so many times, and he's here to shed some light on the information as well. So let's bring in Jason Thomas, who is at USBC headquarters. Hello, JT. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the country.
It's morning. USBC representative. That's my. It's makes it real when you say it like that. But yeah. This is a cool topic. I've been watching Ron's videos. I was aware that he was here to do some testing, and I was really looking forward to seeing the information come out. So we're going to get to have a first look at it today. I can't wait.
Yeah, he has what he's put together a video that we got late yesterday, and that was on purpose. He didn't want us to see the video any time more so than to get immediate reaction to it. And by the way, everybody, this video that we will be showing and premiering throughout the show will be available on Ron Hicklin Jr. YouTube channel immediately after the show, so you can go back and take a look at it. But one thing I wanted to ask you, JT, before we get too much into the show and we bring Ron in, is did USBC solicit Ron to come and handle this topic, broach the topic, or did Ron approach you?
No, it was the second. Ron, obviously, he's one of my favorite people. Whenever I run into him, I would spend an hour, half hour, 2 hours longer than I expected talking to him, because, there's so many interesting topics that we have to talk about. And so, yeah, he was just curious based on everything that had been going on in the industry, wanted to conduct his own tests at the place where, all the certifications happen, and asked if he could come out and do it. And we were happy to allow him to come out and do it and film it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it is that he found, because he's, one of the best minds in the sport, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I just wanted to just make sure, obviously USBC has taken a bit of a public bashing in some camps regarding all of the things that have happened over the last couple of years. And I just wanted to see if this was something that you guys had asked Ron to do, or if this was something that he just wanted to do himself. So that's cool to hear that he just wanted to do it himself. That's awesome. And I'm looking forward to the findings. But before we get too far along, I do have a note here. your team there at USBC and myself, we have teamed up moving forward to do more Sport of Bowling shows. And we're pretty much going to be bringing these shows back every single week with interesting topics and things to talk about in bowling. Every other Tuesday, provided there aren't big events going on where we can't do the show. And we have a lot of events, but we're planning on doing this every other Tuesday, right?
Yeah, that's right. And even when we do have big events going on, we may do the show from wherever that big event is happening. So I'm looking forward to that. This is a great show. It's a great sport. And like you said, we're going to cover just about every topic that you could imagine in the sport of bowling. And that's why it's called the Sport of Bowling Show.
Yeah. And in the comments, as you're watching this video, as it gets distributed, or we're live right now on YouTube and on Bowl TV, if you have any ideas for the show, we'd love to hear them as well. Okay, so JT, anything that you want to say before we introduce our guest here?
No, let's get to it. I want to see what a 30 hardness ball does when you throw it down the lane.
Okay, so let's introduce, let's bring him in. Let's bring in Ron Hicklin Jr., the CEO and founder of Creating the Difference.
What's going on, guys? How are you this morning?
Ron, it's awesome to have you here, man.
Thank you for having me here, man. I'm pretty excited. This is a good time.
Yeah, and you are, I mean, look at that set you have there. You are at the Creating the Difference Education Center in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Boy, that's awesome. You got that place there to be able to do your own testing and checking out what goes on there at the facility.
Yeah, so we do a lot of education, coaching, and training here. We've got 4 lanes. We got 2 different surfaces, which is kind of unique. And we do a lot of pro shop training, bowler training, any sort of training and education revolved around bowling we can do here. We've got Specto, we've got all the cool toys, Specto, Clutch, Torch, you name it, we've kind of got it, except we didn't have a robot. We have no robot. So that was one of the benefits of going down to USBC. But got a lot of tools here, some technology that other people have, some technology other people don't have. So that's one of the things that we do here too, is some development of new products too. So definitely a blessing to be able to get this facility, especially because I was here when that facility was actually purchased by Ebonite International around 2010. And we use it primarily for education testing down here.
So you do your own testing there constantly.
Yeah, a lot of product development happens here. A lot of product development.
Okay, cool. JT and Ron, to the audience at home, they've got lanes every day when they go to work, and we the audience don't. So I think we're all a little bit jealous of both of you, JT.
Well, that reminded me when Ron said we have a robot of Jurassic Park, when John Hammond said we have a T-Rex. We have a robot. Yes.
Yeah, and we'll see that throughout the video here today. So Ron, obviously I've got a list here of accomplishments and things that you've done. You've had a TED Talk regarding bowling ball engineering, and you've held so many different great roles. But the thing that just comes to me, and we talked about it before the show when we got in here, is you are just passionate about bowling, but more so you're on the nerdier side of things. You told me that you purchased a ball spinner when you were 14 years old, and you were resurfacing and working on your own bowling balls at the age of 14. So why are you so passionate about the spec side of things, and why we bowl well or bad with products?
Well, the whole thing kind of started with my father, right? My dad was toting me around from bowling center to bowling center ever since I was like 2 or 3 years old. And I think just the curiosity for me personally of trying to understand the why of everything, right? But specifically, I really wanted to understand a lot more about bowling. It's always fascinated me. I was lucky enough to meet the late Mo Pennell at a very early age, and he sparked a lot of that curiosity, and that really kind of drove me to end up designing bowling balls, to be honest with you. But I think, inherently my character is try to understand things, right? If you can understand things, that just helps all the way around. It help you to improve things, help you to know when to back off, So I just think the inherent character of being able to say, well, let's try to understand these things. And bowling, as simple as it seems on the surface, is incredibly difficult. And that was one of the things that we learned just by going down to USBC.
Yeah, and JT, when Ron came over to the campus and was doing his testing, I'm sure you saw Ron's passion for this as well.
Yeah, I actually didn't see Ron when we were down here, but I mean, there are so many questions. Like after I understood that he had come down and done this, we had talked on the phone a couple times, and there was just so many, practical applications to the testing that he did. I'm curious about, like for example, I'm about to turn 50. So if I were to go out on the PBA 50 tour and I could use a 30 hardness ball, could I keep up with Chris Barnes? Right. I mean, just those kinds of questions are so fascinating to me, and I'm looking forward to seeing in the video what it is that he learned.
Yeah, so let's just make sure that our audience understands exactly what happened here. Is Ron, you went down there, you were there for 2 days of doing testing and things that you wanted to explore, and you've put together a video that's going to debut on your YouTube channel, as I mentioned at the top of the show. But we're gonna take parts of that video and we're gonna cover each one of those topics throughout. I guess the question I have for you is, why did you want to go down to USBC and do this? Because I'm sure it was costly, and I'm sure you have a lot of other things going on with creating the difference.
I mean, the truth is, there's just not a lot of information that's available, right? Like we Googled, searched, bowling ball hardness and looked for more information. There's just not a lot of information available. And, the funny thing is people kind of know creating the difference as a bowling ball cleaner company or a sanding patch or those kind of things. But honestly, creating the difference as an education company, that is what we do. So this was an opportunity for us to learn, as well as being able to use some technology that we just don't have access to. So it was very eye-opening, educational. The only bad part is, you got 10 minutes of video, right? We got 10 minutes of video here and we spent 2 days there. So, we tried to cram as much as we could, but at the end of the day, it's a good start. It's a good start.
Okay, well, I think it's time that we start diving into the meat and the potatoes of why we're here today. So JT, I believe you have a clip queued up for us. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first part of this awesome video that Ron's put together.
The rules of bowling. Why do they exist? What happens when a bowling ball is approved, and does it even matter? That's really what we wanted to go find out. So we went to the United States Bowling Congress, which is the governing body of bowling, and we asked them if we could do some testing at their location. They were like, sure, you can use our facility and our technology, but here is the deal. You come up with the test, and you can perform the test. So we said, all right, let's do it. We had some custom bowling balls manufactured specifically to test the rules of bowling. We came down to Arlington, Texas. We spent 2 days doing testing, using their technology and shooting content to try to understand, why do we have rules, and what does the approval process for a bowling ball look like, and what does it really mean? What would happen if we didn't have rules? What makes a bowling ball illegal? And is there really an advantage to illegal bowling balls? Well, can't wait to show you what we found out.
Okay, so there's our little teaser there that gets everybody kind of ready for this thing. So I guess the first question is, what were you hoping to learn in conducting your own independent research? Being a third party, being able to come in and use the equipment.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it was just really trying to get some more information and data on hardness and its impact in the sport. We had did a video, at our facility with the best that we could do, right? But that video left some more questions. So it was like, well, really, there is some other technology that's available. Plus, we should really go get some specialty balls made and really try to, understand even more about this topic. It's funny because, I designed bowling balls for roughly 15 years, and we never really focused on hardness. And then all of a sudden, it becomes this massive deal within the whole industry. And I'm like, man, to think about that, we never focused on that ever. And I was in charge of that stuff. So like, if it was going to be a focus, it would have been in my department. But to never focus on it, and then to see it create all these issues and all these things within the industry, it was like, well, maybe we should do a little research. So we were, lucky enough to be able to get some balls made. and lucky enough to be able to go down to USBC and use their facility.
So let's talk about those bowling balls, because that was one of the questions I had after being able to view this video. You know, I don't think you own a bowling ball manufacturing facility, do you, Ron?
No, we don't. No.
Where did you get these bowling balls? How do we know these bowling balls are credible from your studies?
Well, what I can tell you is that we actually had a USBC approved manufacturer make the bowling balls for us, and they were expensive. I can tell you, you would know that, a bowling ball probably cost about $200, maybe $250 drilled all in. These balls were $400 a piece, and that was before they got holes put in them.
Well, thank you, Ron, for spending that money for the rest of us to be able to do this research. So support Creating the Difference, everyone, to help Ron out on recouping some fees on these balls. So that's good to hear that they're credible bowling balls. That was a question I had when I watched the video. So when you went there and you were going to do all this testing, why did you focus on hardness? Was it because you were kind of shocked at all the things that happened? And as you mentioned, you really didn't focus on it when you were designing bowling balls, other than making sure it was in spec, of course.
Yeah, hardness has been just a topic, right? It's been a very important topic. So I actually had a bunch of different bowling balls made, not just hardness. We did some differentials testing and some RG testing stuff as well. But I wanted to focus on the hardness because that was a topic that, to be quite honest with you, I probably knew the least about of all of the metrics, and wanted to have a better understanding, and thought, well, if we're going to collect the information, why don't we do it in a way that's as scientific as we can, and then just share it? Like I said, we're an education company. So for us, it's all about trying to share the information that we gain.
Okay. So I think we have the why, and the video then goes on to continue on to explain your findings. So I think this is a good time to queue up our next portion of the video.
So we wanted to look at the rules that exist in the sport of bowling and have a better understanding of how the USBC conducts those tests. So we asked them to go through the testing and approval process for a bowling ball while we filmed it. What is interesting is that the process takes about 5 hours per ball and is intense, repetitive. Some parts are just plain boring, and honestly, it's all highly necessary to create reliable results. There are some aspects of the bowling ball testing procedure that you may be familiar with. COR, or coefficient of restitution, the coefficient of friction, radius of gyration, differential, mass bias, surface roughness, oil absorption. There are also specs on the roundness of a bowling ball, as well as the size. These make sense in general because look at how easy it was to strike with an oversized ball. It's also important to note that without these specs in place, it would be extremely difficult to have a fair playing environment or have equipment that could return the bowling ball automatically. Ironically, the ball that has been the main reason why we started asking questions in the first place doesn't hook the most and doesn't absorb oil. What we really wanted to gain the most understanding about was the hardness of a bowling ball.
So taking a look at that, I think the first thing that catches all of our eye is you throwing that oversized bowling ball, and then that ball that appears to be, like a duck pin ball. Are those balls, do they use those there in testing? How'd you acquire those things?
So it's funny you mentioned that, right? So those balls just happened to be there. That was not initially part of the test, but I was like, "Hey, do you guys mind if we throw some of these other balls you have here?" And at first, they kind of looked at us like, well, "Why would you want to do that?" But then they were like, "Well, sure, go ahead. Whatever you want to do." So it was kind of funny. I will tell you, the oversized ball was 23 pounds.
Wow!
And though you would think that would be very easy, it has a handle, right? If you look at it's kind of funny. When you watch the video, it has a handle and a thumb hole. So the first couple times I grabbed the handle and put my thumb in the ball, and I went straight up in the air. So we learned that, take the thumb out of the ball. And then you would think that that'd be pretty easy to hit the pocket, but it actually wasn't, because that much weight, it pulls you. So it took a little while to get that shot that we ended up showing.
You didn't do it in one take, huh?
No, that definitely was not one take. But once we hit I mean, it was hard to get to the pocket. Once we hit the pocket, then obviously it was like, yeah, hit the head pin and you're going to get 10. So,
yeah, the other thing in there, and obviously you sent balls off to get approved, for many years and your experience, 5 hours per bowling ball
per ball.
Did that shock you?
Yeah, because I mean, think about that for 1 second, right? So the approval process isn't one ball. It starts off as 2 balls. And depending on the specs and how the bowling ball ends up, like they've got some limits, right, that they look for. So if you get close to a limit, they want more balls. I mean, it could be as many as 57 balls. So like for approval for one product. So when I realized how intense the process was, which we were not allowed to be anywhere near that when I worked for the ball manufacturer. But when I found out how intense it was, I was like, this is more than a full-time job. Because think about how many balls are released a year.
Yeah. Are you shocked that you didn't have more issues with the bowling balls that you designed over the years after seeing the process?
So it was kind of interesting. There were some things that you get kind of used to and you begin to know, right? So one of the big things regarding the hardness was that USBC would share the data that they got from Hardness back to the manufacturer. So we knew what they, we checked the balls when I was at the manufacturer, then we sent them to them and then they checked them. So we knew we knew that there was a difference, but we knew what that difference was. So because of that, we could always make sure that, the balls were good. And that's also an interesting point because when I was at the manufacturer, we never made bowling balls that were at the spec for that exact reason, because there's difference. There's always going to be some difference there. So you need to have some cushion there in case, there is a little bit of difference.
Yeah, we've seen over the years from multiple manufacturers, when you flirt with that borderline, right? We saw it with a core several years ago with one of the manufacturers, and we've seen it with Hardness now with a couple of manufacturers. And actually, when you go through that, and I'm not going to mention the names, every manufacturer has had an issue in the last 3 to 5 years from what I've paid attention to. I try to stay on the media side of things and let guys like you or the USBC rules department, spec area down there handle all that kind of stuff, because I am, just like the audience, I'm very novice to this. But yeah, you probably don't want to flirt with those things because, and I guess this is the question I would ask you. You've got bowling ball plants in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. I would imagine humidity, where they're made, all those sorts of things also come into play. Just like when we bowl, like the approaches, if it's humid in there, it's tough to slide, right? You got to pull out different slides. So I would imagine that the testing in Arlington, Texas, as opposed to, Hopkinsville, Kentucky, where you were, or Brigham City, Utah, or Mexico, or up in Michigan right now, that those different places could also play in. Did you do any testing on that, or what are your thoughts on that?
So we tested all the balls at our facility in Hopkinsville, right, before we sent them down, and then had them tested at USBC. And of course, I mean, there was some difference there, and that's how it is. But what's so interesting is, the rules are pretty clear on this too, right? The rules are very clear on this, actually. USBC has a very rigid process, and their durometer is the official durometer. So we tested bowling balls here in Hopkinsville, and they say one thing, but that really doesn't matter because the rules say it's the USBC's durometer in Arlington, Texas. That's the one that matters. So you've got to make sure that you follow those rules. And, we were able to see some differences that we would expect. And, it's good to know that, though, because it allows you to then, if I was a manufacturer, allow you to calibrate your durometer to what they're doing down there. And the rule, and it is fairly consistent, meaning that once you kind of figure out what the difference is, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, so you got to observe the entire process. Was there anything that's not in the video that you saw that made you go, wow, other than the length of the process?
Yeah, we saw a machine that they use there. We talk about it in the video, but we don't show the machine. The machine that they use to check some of their tools, it's a $100,000 plus machine, and it was very impressive. We didn't feel like there's a bunch of things that we just couldn't put in the video, right? So we didn't put it in the video. We do talk about it, but that was very impressive because it's a piece of technology that they have that I have not seen anywhere else.
Okay. Yeah, because I think the thing that a lot of us question when you have an issue is the testing accurate? Was there an error that day? Why did this happen? But from what you observed those 2 days, you believe that everything happening in that facility is 100% accurate with the tools and the things that you found and saw?
Yeah, I think that the tools that they have, the tools are the tools, right? So we can argue all day long if we think the durometer is the right tool. What I will tell you is from what I saw there specifically is they have checks in place to help to validate what they're doing. And I saw I saw point blank the checks that they have in place. And there are things that as an engineer you would expect to see that. And there were some things that I saw as an engineer that were surprising in terms of some of the checks that they have in place.
And folks,
I know as a manufacturer, we didn't have some of those tools.
Okay. And folks, from a credibility standpoint, I didn't mention this on the open because I don't like to read over resumes, but Ron does have a degree from Purdue University in mechanical engineering. So I consider you an expert at this. Okay. So I think that's enough on the testing process there. Thank you for sharing that with us and answering my questions on that. I know some of them are a little tough, but let's go into the next part of the video and see what else we can learn here.
The durometer is the tool used in bowling to measure hardness, and this tool has been used for decades without much fanfare. Hardness, however, has been a multi-million-dollar emotional roller coaster for the entire industry during 2022. People on all sides have voiced their opinion on what they felt about hardness. Some stated that the hardness of a bowling ball plays a role in performance and gives a player an unfair advantage. Others said that the durometer is the problem when trying to measure hardness and that it should not be used at all.
But there just isn't a lot of information available out there that's relevant to this topic. We actually made a video that talked about hardness, and it shed some light on this topic. It also raised some new questions that we wanted to answer with some better technology and using a more scientific approach.
We aren't so focused on the durometer this time because it is the official tool that is used in bowling, and debating it would be pointless in relation to our goal. Instead, we wanted to focus on the performance impacts and potential advantages of hardness measurements. We have questions like, what does softening a bowling ball do to the performance? Is there an unfair advantage to having an illegally softer bowling ball? Does 1 point of hardness difference matter in relation to performance? Can we measure a performance change with such a slight difference in hardness? The lower limit specification for hardness in the sport of bowling for a bowling ball is 73D. This change was made and went into effect on January 1st, 2022. The old spec was 72D.
Okay, so from that segment, I'm just gonna ask you. You know, we see the shot where a softer ball, you can miss a couple boards to the right and hit the strike pocket. From my understanding, does a ball that's harder, if you miss 2 boards left, does it then slide and hit the strike pocket still? So does it balance out, or what does that do?
Yeah, so it's funny, right? It doesn't. There's 2 things that you get. So first off, if you go to line up with the harder ball, you've got to move, right? So you got to change your angle, and it's the angle that matters. So once you line up with the harder ball and you miss in, you don't get the slow down effect. In fact, the ball kind of maintains the speed, so you end up going right through the face, which is what typically happens when you bowl on harder patterns anyway, right? I mean, that's what happens. The problem with the harder pattern is if you miss to the right, there's no help to get the ball to recover, and if you miss in, there's no hold to get the ball to go straighter. So once you go to a harder ball and you try to line it up, you don't have the miss left or right. You have neither one.
So, but you found that a softer ball by how many numbers did create more free hook to the right or more margin of error down lane, or what was it that you found with the softer ball?
Yeah, so it's 2 things, right? And I can explain why. So essentially what happens is what the softer ball does is it naturally allows the ball to want to slow down. Okay. So if you think about the lane pattern, let's say we've got a 40-foot lane pattern, and let's say a normal hardness ball would slow down a mile an hour. Well, a softer ball, and depending on how soft it is, the more it is, but it may slow down 1.2 miles an hour or 1.5 miles an hour or 2 miles an hour. You say, well, how does that even matter? Well, the fact is, the more you can get the ball to slow down to a point, the easier you can create the pattern to be. Think of it this way. Think about when you're bowling league and the lanes are really what we call cliffed, right? Like you throw it and you throw it's a little fast, and all of a sudden the ball goes right through the break point and the ball never recovers. If that ball would have slowed down a little bit, instead of you leaving a washout, maybe it's a light hit, right? So that's what ends up happening when you begin to use a softer ball. You can begin to take advantage of the fact that your ball does slow down, because at the end of the day, if your ball doesn't slow down, it can't hook.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. The way I've always kind of had it explained to me, if your ball's coming in light, you're leaving 2-pin combinations. Being a right-hander, I know you're a left-hander, Ron, but if you're coming in and being light, right, you have options. You can move on the approach, or you could also soften your ball speed, which creates slower ball, right, which kind of shortens the pattern per se, which gives the ball more time to hook, and now you won't leave that 2-pin. You'll be more in the concentrated part of the pocket with optimum entry angle. So what you're saying is a softer ball also can help shorten the pattern, as I just explained, as it's been explained to me over the years from bowling coaches, right? Is that kind of the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
And here's the best part of this, though, Mike. So the thing of it is a house pattern has that slowing down effect built into it. It's called a taper.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a sport pattern doesn't. And that's one of, not the only, but that's one of the big differences. When you don't have that taper, your ball is going full speed all the way to the end of the pattern. So it becomes a little bit trickier, right? That little bit of gas, little faster ball speed, all of a sudden shoots past the break point. Whereas if your ball would slow down via the lane pattern, house pattern, or in this case, softer ball by creating that slower, that slower speed, you get the benefit of it. So you can make a pattern that's very, very difficult a little bit easier. Now, to be fair, the other thing that's interesting is that this doesn't necessarily work on a house pattern, because you already have the taper built in. You already have the slowing down effect built in. So the guy who goes, well, yeah, I'm going to go grab my purple whatever ball and I'm going to go throw it down the lane on my house pattern, you don't get to see the benefit. You just don't, because the impact, the benefit is already built into the pattern you're bowling on. But on tour, at the highest level, different story.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I have so many questions right now, Ron. I want to talk about oil absorption and all these sorts of things, but we can't be here all day. I think we need to move on to the next part of the video here. This is very educational. I'm enjoying it.
An important note here is that the standard for hardness is measured by the USBC. So it doesn't matter what anyone else's durometer says when it talks about hardness. The rules are very clear on this. While watching the USBC do the testing, what was a surprise was the attention of detail they took, not only in collecting the data, but in checking their own durometer. They have a very powerful digital microscope that can allow them to see the wear on the needle that does the testing. Monitoring this wear is important, as this can potentially impact consistency and results. Seeing this technology firsthand showed me that they were doing their best to be as repeatable and as consistent as possible when collecting results.
We made sure that our custom balls were made with the same core, drilled with the same layout, had the exact same true cut surface, and we used the CTD surface scanner to monitor surface change during the testing, because a bowling ball surface can change during bowling, and that can impact performance.
Note, USBC had no influence on our testing procedure or process and didn't know the results, as the bowling balls were all coded except for the 27D hardness ball, because that bowling ball happened to be green, whereas the rest of the balls were purple. We threw the balls 20 shots each in a random order. We had a consistent re-oiling process. We bowled on a 39-foot 3-to-1 ratio flatter test pattern. We found this best to show the results given the balls we had. To be fair, this was not a perfect test. We would have needed months of testing and tens of thousands of dollars worth of balls to get near perfect, And unfortunately, we just didn't have that much time. But we did get a whole lot of information that was far better than anything else we had seen available on this topic to date. So what did we learn? Our testing showed that hardness does play a role in performance. In all the different tests that we performed, that consistently stood out. Now notice I said played a role and not made a ball hook more. In certain situations, the total hook decreased with the softer ball. And one thing that was important was that the softer ball hooked earlier and slowed down more than the harder bowling ball.
So from those findings, I mean, the 27D ball is obviously the strobe light there. That's fun to watch. I mean, I couldn't imagine throwing a 27D ball there. But you threw these different balls with the machine going over the Earl there is the robot's name, and you threw it the same speed, same everything, and then you could see in the video the difference between how much it hooks. So obviously hardness does make a huge difference, and you had the 27 in there to really show the huge difference that why we do have rules, right? I mean, because do you think a 27D ball would have a competitive advantage, or do you think that's too soft, or that's the part that I really don't know much about?
So I'll tell you something interesting about that ball. We specifically had that ball made because we wanted to really push that limit. There's a lot of issues with the 27D ball that we don't even talk about in the video. One, drilling the ball. That ball didn't feel like a bowling ball. It felt more like a sponge. When we went to drill the bowling ball, it took us about an hour to drill the ball because we had to use different drill bit sizes. So when we wanted to get the thumb hole size in there, we had to use 6 different drill bits to get it to the right thumb hole size because it's so spongy. Started with a very small hole and then kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Once we got the ball drilled, there's all kinds of other issues still. Throwing the ball down the lane, that ball actually indents. Like, it can indent. So it was one of those things where, like, not only is it kind of cool to watch going down the lane, but there's all these other potential problems that you would run into. That bowling ball, believe it or not, did not absorb any oil, whereas our other bowling balls did. But what was really interesting was when you look at your bowling ball and you see the track lines around the bowling ball, and they're about like 1/4 of an inch wide. They're kind of small, right? They're small, and there's a bunch of them, right? Well, this one had 3/4 of an inch wide for one track because the ball compressed that much on the lane. So, it was very interesting to have that ball in play because it allowed us to kind of see, is there a benefit? And that ball isn't really usable. We've used that ball several times just to kind of see, could you put enough oil out there? Could we give it to our low rev rate guy? I've got a guy, we call him Billy Revs, and Billy Revs' rev rate's about 225, right? But that's what we call him, right? And I let him throw the ball, and he couldn't use it. And then I've got my other guy, Dustin, who's a former Team USA player, and his rev rate's 450, and he couldn't use it either. So, like, there is a limit. And definitely you have to have some rules in place, and it creates all kinds of other issues as you begin to kind of go to the extremes.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. And again, everybody, if you're just tuning in, Ron's video is going to debut on YouTube here today, right after our show here. So make sure you check that out. Ron Hicklin Jr. YouTube channel. Very easy to find. A lot of great information over there. All right, let's cue up the next part of the video here as we continue on.
This becomes very important when you start to look for advantages that can be created. Our testing showed that the more your ball can slow down on an oil lane pattern, the greater the room for error or misroom that can be created. Our data also showed that a higher rev rate player could take greater advantage of that misroom created by the softness of a bowling ball. The softer the bowling ball is, the easier a flatter pattern can be to a point. If a ball gets too soft, it just becomes unusable. When you think of early hook, you may think of sanding your bowling ball. We found that sanding the ball does in fact make the ball hook earlier, but it also makes the ball lose axis rotation and tilt faster, which means that this ball will not continue hooking as much as it goes down the lane, and this is not desirable. The softer ball doesn't lose axis rotation and tilt as fast, and as a result, the softer ball can continue hooking for a longer period of time. This is very advantageous when you are bowling on a flatter pattern, and you can miss to the outside part of the lane and watch your ball recover. Look at these two shots thrown by a 500 RPM bowler. They show that a two-board miss to the right can still recover and strike with an illegally soft bowling ball. If you've got two different rev rate players using soft bowling balls, the high rev rate player will see more room for error and more miss room for the bowling ball than the low rev rate player will. Having the hook in the right part of the lane is key to creating an advantage on a flatter pattern. House patterns have a taper or a lowering of the oil from the front to the back. This does help the ball slow down, and it's part of the reason house patterns are easier than sport or flatter patterns. Our data showed that there was a measurable performance difference in our 1-point difference test as well. Since some bowling balls tend to get softer over time with use, this does mean that they can potentially create an advantage for a player. Our testing has shown that hardness can create an advantage in bowling, and it can be measured as we have shown. We also think that we need rules in place to help regulate this and other components of the bowling ball. So simply put, the reason we have rules is to create a fair playing environment for everyone and to protect the integrity of the sport. The rules should continue to evolve as more information and technology becomes available, because in the end, you want the best bowler to win based on their ability. I want to thank the USBC and their research team.
Well, very well put together, sir. Some of the information there at the end, obviously, I'd already kind of led the witness here, and we already kind of dove into some of that stuff. But man, just really well put together, and thank you for doing this video.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a lot of help. To be able to get that video done. Mikey Pinnell did did all of the editing for us on that. So I definitely wanted to make sure that he was mentioned in here, because without his help there, we wouldn't have been able to get it done as fast as we were able to. And then just the team down there, man, the team was unbelievably supportive at USBC with allowing us to be able to do what we wanted. And it was literally like I almost felt like they were employees of CTD for a day or so. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, hey, can we do this? Hey, can we do this? But they were very helpful and very accommodating, and we wouldn't have been able to get to the video that we got to. And the only thing that I am a little disappointed in, man, is that we have so much footage, right? We have so much footage, and we could only can show so much of it. So I hope to let people ask questions, because that'll be good.
Yeah, we bring Jason Thomas back in. Jason, you've been facilitating the show. You had a chance to watch the video. What's some of your thoughts?
Well, I'm looking forward to the sequel. But no, I mean, I think this whole topic has been incredibly fascinating. I know you said at the top of the show, Mike, that USBC, we've been pretty quiet on the subject. But it doesn't mean that a lot is not being done behind the scenes to learn more about it. And so I know that there has been a ton of research. Ron, you mentioned, I wish I had more time and thousands of dollars and all these bowling balls that we could have done more. Well, guess what? It's being done. And that I'm looking forward to USBC releasing more information to educate bowlers about this topic. But, to me, the most fascinating thing about the whole issue, starting with the Purple Hammer, was, basically, it's a 7-iron, if we're talking golf analogies, that makes it a little bit easier for a pro to hit the green. And so, if you were the USGA, would you start dialing back driver coefficient springy faceness? I don't know if I'm sure that's not the right term.
I like it.
But right. It's just such an interesting topic because these bowling balls, we've always thought, hey, the more hook you can get, the more advantage you have, but that's just not the way the game works today, right?
Yeah, you're 100% right there. And not only that, but it doesn't apply to everybody the same way. These guys that are on tour that have these extremely high rev rates and are bowling on these very challenging patterns, we're not on the same golf course. We're just not on the same golf course. So you're not going to, even though it's cool to watch them and you can see them do what they do and they make it look very easy. Obviously, if I go out there, or most of us go out there, we're going to get our heads kicked in, but that's what it's supposed to be. And a lot of times I think people, they take that for granted. They see a player or see a group of people that are liking a particular ball and they go, well, let me go get one because I can bowl like them. But that's just not true. We're not Chris Barnes. We're not Jason Belmonte. I mean, even though you may think you are, I mean, we're just not. And to be honest with you, the reason why we're not, it's because we haven't put the time in. I mean, you look at the top players in the world; they have put the time in. They grew up in bowling centers. They've worked. When I was in college, these guys were bowling, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why they are who they are and where they are, as an example. But I think that people kind of miss that. They think, it's all the ball, or it's all the sanding pad, or it's all the ball cleaner. I mean, whatever, right? Instead of when it's all said and done, it's really about putting in the work.
Yeah, they're just tools. These bowling balls, it might be a good fit between your 24th and 25th ball, but that's not really going to help a league bowler all that much, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think, just being someone that loves bowling, loves our sport, anytime some of the, when it comes to rules, who wants to talk about rules, right? I mean, that's why, USBC over the years is, who wants to talk to the police, right? And USBC also has a media department, right? And I've got to join the media department on several times, and we have fun in the media department, but rules, I think, is just overlooked. I think a lot of us just overlook it because we just don't want to talk about it. It's not flashy, it's not TikTok, it's not fun, but they are necessary. Otherwise, our sport really wouldn't be a sport. We have to have these things. Ron, I would like for you to just kind of wrap up in your opinion what bowling would look like potentially if we didn't have hardness rules, differential rules. What do you think we would have on our hands if we didn't have them?
I mean, I think you'd have it'd be a game. Bowling would be just a game. It wouldn't be about skill. It wouldn't be about putting in that work, right? It'd be about who has the best tool, who got the biggest bowling ball, who got the softer bowling ball that makes the most sense. It wouldn't be fun, because it wouldn't be about putting in the work. And I think the thing that makes bowling so awesome is that anybody can do it, no matter how old you are, and nobody can master it, right? Like, you just can't. It's impossible. And that's what makes it fun, because you're always striving to be better. Even the best bowler in the world hasn't mastered the game. He's not averaging 300, right? And that's what makes it fun. And I think that that's one of the things that rules kind of help to allow that situation to always exist. I'm glad, I will tell you too, even as somebody who's been in the industry kind of on both sides, I was kind of like, well, do we really need all of this? Like, is this really worth it? And after spending the time down there and just kind of having a better appreciation, throwing some of those really weird balls and seeing some of the stuff, absolutely. I have a much better appreciation, way more than I had before going down there for the USBC and what they do. And I have a much better appreciation for the rules too, because I've seen what happens when you are allowed to cheat, and I think that we've got to continue to work on developing tools and techniques to keep it as a sport and not let it turn into just a game.
Yeah, I think education is key. JT, did you have anything else you wanted to ask Ron before we let Ron get out of here?
Well, if you watch a video of, a Star Wars director, they're always going to ask what's going to be in the sequel. So I'm just curious what you're going to be working on next. And, are there any specific areas of rules that you're looking to investigate or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some other things up our sleeve, so to speak, right? I mean, we said we wanted to focus on hardness in this video, and we said that specifically, but we spent a lot of money on those bowling balls, and we've got some other bowling balls. We've got some differential bowling balls. We've got some RG bowling balls. And when I say we have these balls, I mean, they're outside of spec. We've got some that are inside and outside of spec. So we did the same kind of process that we did with the hardness with some of the other specifications that are in bowling, because we wanted to test those theories too.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that as well. And folks, Ron Hicklin Jr. here, I've known him since I've been involved in the product side of things. And this is a man that has dedicated himself to the sport of bowling. He wakes up, lives, breathes, and sleeps bowling. His company creating the difference. At first, we didn't know what he was up to, but I know you had a master plan of things that you wanted to see happen with the educational side and helping bowlers. and keeping people in our sport. Where can people go and find out what you're doing? And if you have a couple of little quick things you'd like to mention, let's do that now.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, obviously, the easiest thing to do is to join our staff. We have a free staff you can join. You just go to our website, ctdbowling.com. Click the three little lines. A drop-down menu will pop up. And what we do with that staff is we just do education. So stuff like we're having right now is what we do in the staff group. It's just lots of free education that we offer to any of our staff members. Obviously, we sell products and services to support what we do, right? This is not free for us to do. So we've got products, we've got bowling ball cleaners, we've got sanding pads, we've got a couple other little tools that are coming along here very soon as well to be able to help bowlers as well. But at the same token, the whole goal is really just to educate people as much as possible. My YouTube channel, Ronald Hicklin Jr. on YouTube, is a place for free information too. If you're like, I don't know if I want to get in, but I want to see kind of what's going on, that's a great place to be able to go. That's where we're going to show this video. And that's another place. We put out a video pretty much every other day on that YouTube channel. We've got more than 1,200 videos that are only related, that are only about bowling.
Awesome. And this video that we showed throughout today's show is now becoming available over on your YouTube channel. I would definitely recommend people go and check that out. And Ron, on behalf of all of us in the bowling community, we would all like to thank you for your work, passion, dedication to the sport of bowling and all that you do to help grow it, keep people interested in it, educate them, and provide great products as well. As you said, you can't do all this work for free. So you do have a product side of things that helps support what's going on. So if you support creating the difference, you're actually supporting the future of education in bowling and growing the sport. So I definitely would recommend people should check that out. Ron, thanks for being here today. Appreciate it. We got the Sport of Bowling show coming up every couple weeks. Hope to have you back on in the future, see some more findings, and maybe we can even talk about things that are more fun than rules, I guess. But today it was fun for me to spend some time with you as well.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jason, for having me on, man. This thing is awesome. I'm really excited that the Sport of Bowling show is coming back, and we'll be looking forward to watching some of your future topics.
And being on, too.
Yeah, of course. We'll come back.
You'll be like our Mr. Wizard, right?
I love that show.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for everything you've done. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
All right, so there you have it, JT. Ron Hicklin Jr., his findings coming down there. I want to know more. I would like to know more. But it was great to see Ron today. Always good conversations with him. And I like the fact that he, doesn't work for the United States Bowling Congress like you do. He is a third party, and he took it upon himself to want to come down there. And I'm glad that USBC wanted to do this show, this special show. And I appreciate the opportunity to host it, of course, to really dive into what it was that he was interested in. And I guess I wanted to ask you too, why'd you guys open the door and give him access to all those tools and that, like, what that seemed, you didn't have to do that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's we've done tests for a lot of folks in the industry that have asked, right? I mean, we're really, I think maybe the little bit of a misconception about what USBC does is we do these research projects to share the learnings with the industry, and then the industry is involved in any changes that come about because of the research that we've done. And so I think that if people understood that a little more, maybe they'd be a little nicer to us. I personally, I feel a little bit lucky because I don't work in the rules department directly. I get to be kind of like the Mary Poppins that gets to have fun. And I still think rules are important, but we also should have fun with them. And you said something just before you asked the question, which I think is so, it just relates to bowling so well, which is there's always more information. And the more you learn, it feels like the less you know, because there's just more information out there that you can be learning about. And in order to appreciate this sport, that's where it's at. Learning more about it, becoming more educated is the most important thing.
I appreciate my MacBook Pro, but I certainly don't ever call up Apple and wonder why the chips are a certain way inside of it. But I do constantly try to learn and educate myself on how to be more efficient on my MacBook Pro. And I also want to be able to learn the software so that I can be more productive and do good upon whoever it is I'm working with or self-projects. So I like to kind of use that comparison. And I think that's why I don't talk to Apple about all the components inside of the computer, but I certainly do have a lot of interest in how that computer can help me be more successful in life. And I think that's what Ron's been able to do here with his video series and what he's doing with creating the difference.
Yeah, he's great. We've got a lot of other great people in the industry. And Mike, I'm looking forward to bringing more of that information and those guests and those topics to you guys on future episodes of the Sport of Bowling Show.
Absolutely. And USBC is doing more research, and there'll be more information coming out about that before the end of the year, maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah. In November.
Okay. Well, this has been fun. We said we'd do an hour, and we're right at an hour. So we're right on time. JT, it's been an honor being here with you here today. And we want to thank our guest, Ron Hicklin Jr. from Creating the Difference for joining us here today. And we want to thank you, the viewers, for watching us here today on Bowl TV. Hopefully you learned something today. And when it comes to the rules and the hardness and all the different things that make up a bowling ball, that stuff's pretty heavy, as they say in Back to the Future. And I'm glad there's a lot of smart people working on it, and I don't have to do it. So for Jason Thomas, for Ron Hicklin Jr., our guest today, we're signing off here from the Sport of Bowling Show. We're looking forward to seeing you on our next episode coming up on November the 1st. It's Tuesday, noon Eastern. We'll see you then. Have a good day, everybody.